All right, here we go with 3 minutes of history from Scott Cooper. We're going to talk about the Virginia and the New Jersey plan in less than 3 minutes. Think about the government we have today. Don't think about it too much. It's just kind of crazy. But we originally had the Articles of Confederation that didn't work. We do now have a Senate and a House of Representatives, but that was not always so. So when we went from the Articles of Confederation, we had to come up with a new plan, and the new plan started with Virginia's Edmund Randolph, who came up with the Virginia plan. Actually, it was James Madison who had the majority of this, but we're going to give it the credit to Edmund Randolph, who presented it to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia on May 29th, 1787, the Virginia Plan. Well, what was involved in that? Well, it did have a bicameral legislature, that's two houses. You had a lower house that was elected directly by the people, and an upper house that was elected by the lower house. Think about how that's going to work. So the number of representatives per state would be determined by the population, kind of like what we have now in the House of Representatives. But what would happen is that the bigger states would have more power than the smaller states. So the smaller states said, nah, that is not going to work. It also gave veto powers to an executive that was elected by Congress, and that executive would not be allowed to participate in lawmaking. So that was the first plan. The smaller states said, wait a minute. We're a small state. We can't have that. So they came up with a plan called the New Jersey Plan. And the New Jersey Plan was brought forth by William Paterson, who was a delegate on June 15th, 1787. And instead of a bicameral legislature, it had a unicameral legislature, which means it only had one house. And every state got one vote. Kind of like what our Senate is today. We have two senators, but we have kind of something like that. And in order to strengthen the central government, the New Jersey Plan gave Congress the power to tax and regulate trade, but this favored the smaller states, and there was the problem. So what are we going to do? Roger Sherman of Connecticut came up with a clever solution, and that is known as the Great Compromise, which is a bicameral legislature, what we have today, a lower house called the House of Representatives, and an upper house called the Senate. The lower house, you get all your delegates based on the size of your state. And the Senate, everybody gets two. So there you go. That is the Great Compromise that came up with our current form of government from a combination of the New Jersey and the Virginia Plan. So there you go. By the way, here's your trivia on the Constitution. The Constitution was written. Who wrote the Constitution? We know who wrote it, but who actually wrote the document that was signed? A guy by the name of Jacob Shallus. He was a Pennsylvania General Assembly clerk, and he was paid $30 to do so. That's about $830 today. All right, 3 minutes of history. Talk to you soon.